To open this application, we just look for the application on the desktop here, and we can see this is the application. That's the icon, Matrix 2. We double click on that, and then it takes us to this window, and here we see homepage M2. We double click on that, and it opens the home page. Now on the home page, we can see Matrix homepage. We see the Matrix logo here, Matrix Tech business software, fast, easy and accurate, and then we see a welcome line to welcome the visitors. And we look on the left hand side here, we see the developer, which is Sehtijan Khan, and that's me. I am the developer of this application, and scanfoundation72@gmail.com. that's my email. Now when we look on the right side here, we can also see about this app. The type is Excel Vba application. The system requirements is Windows 7 and above, and Microsoft Office 2013 and above. Now, purpose of this application is business records keeping for merchandising enterprise. I have already made a video on service enterprises. That was video 1, and then this is the second video here. Now here we can also see the developer Sehtijan Khan, that's me still, and then from there we can see here this line says please enable macros before you start. Now it's an Excel VBA application, and the macros need to be enabled before the application can work properly. Now to enable macros, we simply go to the developers tab, click on that, and we look for macro security. Click on that, and then we enable macros here, and okay to that. Our macros are enabled now, and we can start. To start, we simply click on this start button, and then we are to provide a password here, and then I provide the password, and then the application is now open. Now it brings us to the dashboard. On this dashboard, we see the letterhead of the business for which this application was developed, that is ZP Merchandising. And we see the period of this records keeping, which is January to December 2022, which can be edited according to the period for which you are keeping records. Now we see buttons here, the sales and purchases button, expenses, invoice, summary, and then the net profit. Now we're going to look into every one of these buttons to see how it works. Now we first go with the sales and purchases button. We click on that, and it takes us to this place here, and we see product sales and the purchases. Now here we see a list of 10 products, which means this application is going to handle only 10 products. We can build an application that handles far more than that, but for this purpose here we only have 10 products. Now when we look at the table, we find that we have columns here, and then we have the product ID, the name, the units, and the comments. Now to register a product in this application, we need to provide this information. Let's provide the product ID here as PR001, and the name, let's call it sugar, SUGAR, and then the units, let's call boxes, BOXES. Those are our examples, and the comments we can say UK, perhaps UK sugar. Now when we have this, it means we have already registered this product in the application, and when we want to see the account of this product where we're going to enter purchases and sales, we simply click on this button, and it takes us there. There we can see here we have already entered product 001 sugar and boxes, and this information has come automatically here. Now once we are here, the first thing to do is to go and record sales, purchases, because we need to purchase in order to get some stock to be able to sell. Now here, this is the purchases table. The first thing we have to do is to enter the purchasing price of those sugar boxes that we said. Now we take 1,000 as the purchasing price here, that is the cost price, and then from there we can now enter a purchase here. We enter the date by inserting the date. The supplier, let's call him TK, and then the supplier phone number, let's type any phone number, and then the quantity, let's imagine we purchase 10 boxes, and then the unit cost here, we only have to click on the insert cost price button, and then the cost price here is inserted. We do that, and then the cost price is inserted, and we see 10,000 here as the total cost, which is the quantity multiplied by the unit cost. Now let's imagine there is a second transaction, that is second purchase that we made, same date, but this time we're buying from KK as a supplier, and his phone number, let's give that as a phone number. Let's buy 5 from him, and then let's have the let's insert the cost price. Again we say this. So here when we look at the total cost, we find that there are 10,000 and 5,000, which gives us 15,000. Now when we look up here, we see simply the total cost of purchases, which is 15,000. That's the sum of everything that is going to be in this column will be brought up here as the total cost of purchases. Now when we look on this place here, we see product inventory summary. Now this product inventory summary here, we see total quantity purchased. We remember that we purchased 10 and then we purchased 5, which is summed up to 15. That's it here. Total quantity sold is nothing because nothing is sold yet, and total quantity in stock is actually the 15 because nothing is sold yet. So let's go to the sales table and try to make some sales there and see how it will work. Now here, when we are on the sales table, the first thing that we have to do is we have to decide on the price on which we are selling our product. Now here, let's imagine we are selling at 1,200. We are selling at 1,200. The cost price has already been automatically brought here from the sales table, from the purchases table, and then here we have inserted also our cost price. Now we make an entry, that is a sale transaction. Here we go with the date, we insert the date with this button. We put the customer, who is BK, as a customer. Quantity, BK buys 7 boxes of sugar. When we want to know what we are doing, we can simply come up here, product details. We can see that it is sugar, that's the name, and then its boxes, the units. So quantity 7 boxes of sugar. Now the cost price, we simply click on the insert cost price button and it inserts the cost price. The selling price also, we simply click on that, insert selling price, and it inserts that. Now automatically the calculation is made here. The total cost is calculated, the total sales value and the gross profit, that is the difference between the two. Now let's make a second sale. A second sale is here. Let's insert the date, and then SK is going to be the second buyer, that's the second customer. He buys maybe 5 boxes, and then there we insert the cost price and the selling price by clicking on the buttons, and then the calculations are automatically made here again. Now when we look up here, we find the product sales summary for this particular product. How much sales is made? 14,000. How much cost of sales is 12,000, and the gross profit is 2,400. Now when we go back to this purchases side to see our stock, we know that we have made some sales. So when we look here, we'll find that the total quantity purchased was 15, the total quantity sold is 12 now, and the total quantity in stock is just 3. Now there we go. Once we make entries for the product, we can simply save, and there with this save button, and then we say okay to that. Now when we want to delete something, we can use this clear button to delete it, but once again this clear button, when we delete something with this clear button, we cannot redo it with the redo button up here. We cannot undo it with the undo button here. So the safest is to be sure that you don't definitely need that information before you use this clear button, or if you think you will need it, it's better you use the delete button on your keyboard where you can undo that action. Now once we have made these entries, we go back to the products and we look at this button here. This button takes us to a summary table. That summary is going to be everything that we entered on the sales and purchases table for every one of these products. It's going to be summarized here. So let's click there and see. We can see up here the product sales and some sales and purchases summary. Now the products are listed here automatically, product 1 to product 10, and then we can see here the product names are going to be listed here automatically. Everything comes from the sales and purchases tables of every product. Now we see the units. As we remember, we had sugar and we had boxes. For the first product we had 12,000 cost of sales, and then we have total sales value 14,400. The total gross profit, that's the difference between the two, is 2,400. The quantity purchased, we said, was 15, and then we sold 12, and then we have in stock 3. Now the total cost of purchases is actually 15,000. Now this table summarizes everything that is going to happen on all the 10 products. Now from there we can look at this button, which we said is the read selection button. With read selection button we can simply click on something and then it can read that for us. We can select something and it reads that for us. PR1
sugar boxes.
That's fine. So it has read this selection. That's the use of this button here. Now once that is done, we can simply go back to our table here, where we have all our products listed. That is the list of products here. Now from there we can simply go back to the dashboard, and then we look at the expenses table. The expenses table, okay, we are now back on the dashboard here. We have seen the sales and purchases button, which took us to the sales and purchases tables, and that is we have now come to see the expenses table through this expenses button. So we simply click the expenses button and it takes us to this expenses table here. Now this expenses table, we have covered it in a previous video, but we will look into it again quickly. And here we can see the letterhead of the business, that the business enterprise that for which we have built this application is ZP Merchandising. And we see buttons here like the insert date, declare, save, the dashboard. We see the total amount here. That is the total amount of expenses, and then we see the currency that we are using here. This currency comes from the sales table. Now here we can see the read selection button, which can help us to read anything that we select here. Now there we go. On the expenses table we want to make an entry, and then we see how it works. The first thing is to click the next available cell on the date column here, and then we simply click the insert date button to insert the date. Once the date is inserted, we can type a supplier name here. We can type a supplier name here. The supplier name is going to be maybe JK, and then JK, the item that he supplied us, maybe Vanguard. We type Vanguard there, and Vanguard is going to be in packets, so we choose from this drop down list packets, and then we click here to enter the quantity. Let's say 10 packets of Vanguard at a price of 20,000 each, and then that's that. The amount is calculated here to be 200,000. Now this amount is going to be added on all the other amounts on this column, and the sum total of that is going to be here at the total amount. Now that's how this works. And the other thing to show here is the drop down list that we have here is coming from this list. Let us go and see the list. This is the list from which the drop down items are coming from. So if we want to add anything on that drop down list, or we want to remove anything, we do that from here. So that's how the sales table works, and we can simply save the entry that we have made. We click OK on this, and then we go back to the dashboard. Now, dashboard, now we want to look at the invoice button. This takes us to an invoice. Let's click on that and see. Yes, this is where we are on that invoice. Now let's do this sample data here, so that we put some fresh data to see how it works. The first thing we see on the invoice here is the business name, the business for which this application was built. It is ZP Merchandising. And then from there we can see the sales invoice, and then we see the invoice number here, the date, and then we see the names again here. Let's delete those ones again, and then we put new fresh examples to understand how it works. All right, so there we see, and then here also let's delete that too. Now There we go. We're going to see also buttons like the back to dashboard button. Here we're going to see this print invoice button. This print invoice button is very important for this invoice, because when we click this invoice, what happens is it saves the invoice as a PDF on our desktop, and then at the same time it sends the printing of this invoice to the printer, and then it prints out one copy of it. Now, but before we do all that, we start entering some data on the invoice first. The first thing to do is to insert a date. We click on that button and it inserts the date here. Now we're going to click on next invoice so that we have the first invoice, because right now there is 0 invoice here. So the next invoice will bring us to invoice 1. That's it. We click that and then it takes us to invoice 1. And here we try to put the name of the customer. That is, let's put SS as the name of the customer, and the address, let's put S1 as a sample. Now here we go. We put some quantity here, let's say 20, and then we put a description which is just going to be EE. And then the units here, we're going to put the unit price, we're going to put like 1000, and then 10 by 1000 should give us the amount here. Now once we press enter on our keyboard or we click outside, that calculation is automatically done here for us. Now let's make a second entry and see. Let's take 10 again, and then let's take another item Y there, and then let's take here the price to be 2000 this time, and then we click outside again, and that calculation is also done for us. Here we see the first amount was 10,000 and the second amount is 20,000, which gives us a total of 30,000 altogether. And then we see here amount paid. This amount paid here, this cell here, is the amount that is paid by the customer. Sometimes it is possible that the customer pays only a part payment. When we put that part payment here, let's imagine he pays 15,000, and then as a part payment, when we put that there and we press enter, not 15,000 there, let me put 15,000, all right, and we press enter, so automatically it deducts that 15,000 from the total, which is 30,000, and then it gives us a balance of 15,000 again. Now in case the customer paid the full amount, not only part payment but the full payment, we don't have to type anything. We simply click on this button here, full amount paid. We click on that, and then it brings the total amount here. The total payment has 30,000 equal to the total amount of the invoice, and then the difference between the two is 0, which gives us as a balance of 0. Now here we have the currency. It's a drop down list, and then we can pick the currency that we are dealing with. Like here, this is the list from which the drop down items are coming from. So if we want to add anything or want to reduce anything from this drop down, this is where we're going to add or remove that item. Now from there we can type the total amount in words. We type that there, and then our invoice is ready to be printed. When we want to print, it's simple. We come to the print invoice button here. Once we hit that button, now it sends the printing to the printer, and we can see that printer here, and I will just close that. And then we said also it will save the invoice as a PDF on the desktop. So let's go to the desktop and see the invoice. You can see it here. Last printed invoice is saved here. When we open that, we can see the last printed invoice. You remember the names and the entries that we made. Now we close that down, and then we get back to the application here. Now once we finish printing an invoice, if we want to go to the next invoice, it's simple. We simply click on this button here, next invoice, and what that does is it changes this serial number to the next number. Here it's going to change it to number 2, and it's going to delete all the data that is in the invoice, and it becomes a fresh invoice again. So let's do that. We click the next invoice. All the data is gone, no name here, no address, all the entries are gone, and then it has changed this to invoice number 2, and the date is still here. So this is how the invoice also works, and from there we can simply get back to the dashboard to see the other button that follows, which is the summary button. Here we are on the dashboard again. We have already seen the sales and purchases table. We have seen the expenses table through the expenses button. We've seen the invoice. Now we are going to see the summary. This summary, we actually have already seen it when we were on products. So I can just click here to go back to products, and we see that there is a button. This button can take us back to the summary. So we click and it takes us to the summary here. So there are two ways to get to the summary. Either we go through the products here to go to the summary, or we go through the dashboard here to go to the summary. It's the same thing. That's the same summary table here. Now all the data in this table comes here automatically from the entries that are made from the products 1 up to product 10. We can see all the data that is from the product name, the units, the total cost of sales, the total sales revenue, the total gross profit, the total quantity purchased, the total quantity sold, total quantity in stock, and then the total cost of purchases. Everything comes here automatically. This table is not editable. Everything comes here automatically, as I said. Now from here we simply can go back to the dashboard, and then we visit the net profit table. To go back to the dashboard, we go to the net profit here. When we click on net profit, it takes us here. Now with this net profit, we can simply see total gross profit. This total gross profit comes from the summary table. If we want to edit it, we can simply if you want to edit it, it's not possible to edit it. If we try to do that, it sends us to the source of this data, which is the summary table. And I click on OK. It sends us to the summary table here, and we can see the total gross profit. Now this is the total gross profit here, and I can go back and then go to the dashboard, and then I get into the summary again, and then that's that. Then I get back and go to the dashboard and get to the total the net profit. It's here. Now the expenses also is not editable here. When I try to edit it, it will send me back to the expenses table. That's where it is coming from. It's here. It's coming from the expenses table here, and I go back to the dashboard and then to net profit again. Now here the net income is the difference between the gross profit and the expenses, and that too is not editable. It comes automatically. When I try to edit it, it gives me the source. It selects these two cells to tell me that this is the source of this data here. Now here we can see that this is the currency which is coming from the sales table. It's not editable, and this is today's date. Now that's the net profit table here, and it sums up the net profit. That is, it gives the difference between the gross profit, the total gross profit, and the total expenses. Now from here we can get back to our products here, and then we get back to the dashboard, and from there we have completed this store of this application. And then to close our application, now we simply hold down the shift key on our keyboard, and we click on this close button, and it brings this dialog box. We say save all. Everything is going to be saved with these confirmations, and then that